remember when people actually did have a sense of humor? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Good times.
I mean, do you think of the year 2022? I mean, you've been a Christian your whole life, raised in a Christian family. I mean, I'm assuming, is it weird to like look back? You're how old now?
I'm 68.
You're 68. I'm sure there's music you listen to now that seems so unoffensive, but in your generation as Christians, people were like, you shouldn't listen to that.
Right.
I always wonder, like, we look at Elvis now, and Elvis is fun pop, but like Christians were really concerned about Elvis,
right. and they weren't wrong.
And they weren't wrong. But now, if you found out that your nephew was really into Elvis, I doubt you'd have any concerns.
Right.
Like literally.
Yeah, I might be concerned about the dork factor, but.
Right, but other than that, how was the play? But I mean, is that Christians lightening up, or is there actually are we getting less offended by sin? What's changing that allows you to be okay with the Beatles today and maybe even play them at church events? Or the Eagles, which wasn't even that long ago. Why is that not offensive? Wouldn't that just be the case that we've gotten desensitized?
Yeah, some of it is the desensitizing aspect of it. So, are you familiar with the Overton Window? The Overton Window is a description of what's acceptable in public discourse. And in our culture, through my entire adult life, the Overton Window has moved steadily left.
Okay.
So things that you used to be able to say that were just self-evidently common sense in 1962 are now hate crimes.
Right, okay.
Or I could say things from Obama's first presidential campaign that would be...
Yeah, man and a woman, marriage is between a man and a woman.
Right. So that's an example of the Overton Window moving.
Right.
And the Overton Window moves not just in political debate and discourse, it also moves in entertainment. And sometimes it'll bounce back. So the 70s was a time when they were, there was some theater released porn, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's been some sort of reaction back. But overall, steadily, the degradation of our culture, our morals, our public discourse has generally moved left and looser. So that's, at the same time, there were Christians who were a little bit too tight-shoed. They were fastidious in the wrong ways.
Right.
There really were legalistic traditions that were useless in retarding this corruption.
Right.
And the fact that fastidiousness is gone, I think, is a good thing. And the corruption of our public morals is a bad thing.
Right.
So what I would say to my kids, when they were growing up, and we would listen to different songs, we would curate the music that we could listen to at home. We monitored that carefully, but I drew a sharp distinction between rock music or the blues and rock culture.
Back to culture, back to tribes, back to You can't just
All right. So I would be willing to play a song in our house. The kids doing their homework and they listen to the song, but I'd rather be dead in a ditch than to let them go to a concert by those guys.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Because the concert would be the culture in full display. Right. So, and there's something that's happened over this time where music has become much more ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yes.
And everyone has their own playlist, their own
fascinating.
Everybody's got their own soundtrack for the day.
Curated.
It's a curated soundtrack, and that's sort of like the wallpaper, the oral wallpaper of our lives.
Right.
And I want to make sure that there's nothing degraded and corrupt and licentious about that pattern of the wallpaper, but the guy who designed the wallpaper might have been a flaming homosexual or might have been mean to his wife or, whatever. And so I wouldn't be good buddies with him, but I'm willing to use his stuff as his backdrop.
Right. Well, when I think of you as a big wallpaper guy. So I know that's, but I think even now, I think if you're a Christian in the 70s, you're probably not laughing at Richard Pryor. But in 2022, you're like, wow, Richard Pryor's amazing. Like there's something about going back now in this day and age.
Right.
And because it seems like back in the day for you, for me, I was a lot younger though. Back in the day, when people went off the rails, they went off the rails going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, well, yeah, that song's about picking up chicks and taking them home, which is a good thing if it's a lady and you get married and you take her home. It was going the right direction.
Right.
Now we have things off the track, turned around, going the other way.
Right.
And now when we look back at those things, it's like, I think I enjoy 70s rock. I mean, 70s rock, 99.9% of it could only have been created by heterosexual men. Mm-hmm. And even Freddie Mercury is still way more heterosexual than most men today.
And if I can throw this extra element in, I think the music was just better in terms of musicianship.
Sure.
And there was a recent article I've heard about, I think in the Atlantic, about a large percentage of the music that's being streamed today is the old music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think it's just better craftsmanship, better musicianship. But that doesn't mean there's a bunch of things about the way they would live their lives.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
No.
Right.
Sorry.
All right, one more quote is, that was out of context, but we'll just touch it real quick. There's really no category for this, but this one pops up a lot, which is you'll just get a meme and it'll say, quote, Doug Wilson, you, wanted me to tell him in detail everything that happened when we had sex. Not with you, but with someone else. So I needed to tell him in absolute detail what sexual experience happened, how many times it happened, all that kind of stuff. And this is testimony of a woman, former student at Logos, founded by Doug Wilson. First of all, is that a true quote? Is someone talking about you truthfully in that quote?
Is someone representing it correctly?
Yes.
Right. It's not a quotation of my words like some of the other ones you've asked me about.
It's their
summary,
their testimony,
their testimony about this experience. What they're describing, the way they're describing it, is not what I do. Okay.
Right.
But there are.
I'm assuming if my daughter came to you as her pastor,
right,
at 17 or 18,
right,
and said, I've been having sex with guys at school.
Right.
Your response wouldn't just be, okay, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you would say that, but I'm assuming you'd want to know, what do you mean by that? Is that what's happening here?
Yes.
I'm not trying to defend you per se, but I'm assuming if my daughter came to you, now, I don't know what the structure would be. Do you say, well, the father should be there, a parent should be there? What are we missing in this quote?
So in this kind of scenario, it would be it could either be because the parents brought their daughter in,
right,
and said,
because you're not just talking to high school girls that come into your office by yourself, right?
No.
I mean, and I've seen your office. It's never not had a glass, and you can see in there. So
we do public accountability things. It's possible that something like that would have been part of a disciplinary process. Okay. So, is this student going to be expelled or not? And
sure.
So if someone comes to me and says, "Billy touched me," I want to say, well, this has ramifications for both you and Billy.
Right.
Okay. Was it one time? Could it have been an accident?
And so now you're a pervert for asking this, right? That's the picture, right? If the cop asks it, or if the fireman asks it, or if the prosecutor, or if the city, whatever, if they ask it,
They're doing their job.
Doing the job. If you ask it, you're a pervert.
Right. That's the implication that they're trying to draw. But the thing I would argue is that pastors are frequently in the same position that a cop or a counselor or a magistrate are in.
Right.
They're having to sort out between people what actually happened.
Right.
Okay. And you're talking, let's say you're talking to, and there are any number of things like my husband raped me.
Right.
Okay. Well, can you describe for me what, and they're both there and I'm talking to them and can you describe?
Do you think a husband can rape his wife?
Yes. I think I think he physically can, and it would be rape and it would be appalling.
Right.
But one of the things we have to, and this is one of the things we have to deal with in this messed up world, there is such a thing as violent rape. There's such a thing as acquaintance rape, date rape. There's marital rape. And then there's the kind of rape, which is any kind of sexual encounter that the woman afterwards regrets. Okay. And then she can just call it rape. And so if I'm talking to, let's say that accusation comes up, any accusation comes up, woman tells her story, I'd say, okay, is that what's your account? If he says, yeah, that's a fair cop, then I know more. If he says, no, we were both drunk and, and here's the extenuating circumstance that she's leaving out,
Right.
So what you do is you're trying to find out what actually happened. Right. Now, when
you're not a kinky pastor that just gets his jollies off on asking all these girls what their sex lives are.
Right. And I don't ever, because it's not pertinent to anything that I'm doing, I don't ever ask for any prurient details. Okay. So it's how many times would be, is this a pattern?
Right.
Okay. He took advantage of me over the course of 3 years, multiple times.
Okay.
One of the questions I'm going to say is, did it ever occur to you to tell your dad or to tell your mom?
Right.
That you were trapped in this
right.
thing? So that's what happens over 3 years. If it happens one time when she was alone and vulnerable and he attacked her, that's a completely different scenario. Right. And so, so if you're in a position of authority, like on the school board or in a pastoral situation, and you got the prospect of disciplining, let's say everybody's in your church, and you're going to excommunicate this guy for what he did to the girl. You need to know, basically, if you're going to excommunicate someone for something, you should know what it is you're excommunicating.
And again, and the only argument against that is, no, you as the pastor have no right to be asking those questions. And so you'd have to create a scenario now where pastors have no authority and people can't enter into organizations under particular discipline or under particular rules.
Right. So you can't have access to that information. And then it erupts years later that this guy was doing stuff.
Right.
And why didn't you do something about it?
Right.
Well, you told me that I wasn't allowed to know about it. I can only do something about it.
Break that down one more time.
Okay. You can't have, it's another example of you can't have it both ways. In these sorts of situations, when I investigate a situation, to find out whether discipline is appropriate, church discipline or academic discipline. So,
and let's say, in the context of there being sexual activity, okay.
How many times? And I say, so how many times has he sexted you? Well, he's been doing it for 6 months. And you're telling, am I the first person you've told? Okay, I'm finding out what happened.
Right.
So the person.
And if you do that, now you're a kinky old man pastor who gets his jollies off.
So if I investigate it, they can say you're a kinky old
Right.
pervert. If I don't investigate it, I say, oh, people text one another. People text one another. I don't want to inquire. Because I don't want to be accused of being a pervert.
Not my business.
Not my business.
I'm a guy. You're a girl.
Right. Forget about it. Then I can be accused of creating a climate of secrecy, and people can't send out a flare, send up a distress signal because the leadership just didn't want to know.
Or you don't care.
Right.
Didn't do anything.
Right. And so
you're always making decisions. The more I talk to you about this, it's becoming more clear. You're aware of this, and you at some point made the decision that you can't win.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just going to make sure you're doing the right thing.
I want to do the right thing with a clear conscience. Right. So if someone accuses me of getting my kinks from this sort of conversation, I want to be sure before God that that's absolutely false, and they can say what they want. But it's just false. That doesn't happen. And I want to make sure that I ask enough to know what I need to do responsibly to be a pastor to protect the people in the congregation. So if there's a dirty bird wandering around the congregation, I want to know what he did, what he said, how many times he tried it. Do you know of anybody else he's done this to? Because we want to put a stop to it. We need to protect.
Right.
Right. And I can't protect because somebody out there did something. I can only protect if I have information.
Right.
And if I get information, I can be accused of wanting the information for my own jollies. But if I don't get information, I can be accused of wanting to keep a climate of silence.
Right. Two more on the memes.
Okay.
Let's see. From the Vice article.
Okay.
To learn about Christ Church's culture of abuse and social control. Okay. Vice has interviewed 12 former and current church members and Logos students and reviewed court and medical documents, church correspondence, and business filings. Ex-Kirkers describe a punitive community in which women are told they must defer to church leaders and cannot say no to their husbands. Men are taught to strictly control their homes, and those who speak out can be isolated and harassed. My question is, how come I've not been invited into this club?
Yes. If you've
I've been here 7 years. I just want to know, what do I have to do to get behind the veil?
You don't know the secret handshake.
Apparently, because I've never had anyone. I've been a member for a long time, and I don't know where I've been given this power that women and that my wife is not allowed to say no to me.
Right.
And that I'm supposed to strictly control my home.
Right.
And those who speak out can be isolated and harassed. I've not gotten the memo. Why have I not been invited into this club?
I've got another mystery for you, and that is, why did they review the documents that prove all this and not quote any of them?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, it's one of the worst written pieces I've ever tried to read. No, but from a writing standpoint, it's really badly written in one sense.
Yeah. And so what they're doing, so it's just absolutely false. That's a blazing grease fire of a lie.
Yeah.
It's just a hit piece lie. Because we don't believe that women can't say no to their husbands. We teach and have taught publicly that there are many situations where a wife needs to be an Abigail to her Nabal husband.
Right.
There are limits to. Every time I teach on governments and human authority, I say that no human authority is absolute.
Right.
It's a true authority, but it's not absolute. Wives, you should know what the line is. Husbands should know what the line is. So it's simply false from top to bottom, stem to stern.
Yeah.
They're making stuff up. If they had a smoking gun of secret tapes of me saying that, it would have been child's play to produce it.
And clearly there's idiot men
Yeah.
that have come through, I'm assuming, the
Right.
church, right?
Right.
Who have thought this way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like
Yeah, there are men, and when we encounter them, we have disciplined them.
Right. And then they leave and they're upset and they talk smack because you're not enabling them or backing them up.
Well, because disciplining abusive men is controlling. Notice how you they say social control,
right?
Like that's bad,
right?
Well, that's what society is,
right?
Is social control, right? When you can't have a group of people functioning together without certain shared expectations and values and that sort of thing.
Right.
And so one of those expectations is that husbands will not be angry, abusive men. That's one of our forms of social control.
You know, I thought was funny in the article too, I think it was the same one. It said, depending upon whom you ask, the town either hosts a Calvinist utopia or a patriarchal cult in which women must submit or face discipline at home and at church. Again, I find it funny. No one's clued me in on this, but I haven't even been clued in on some Calvinist utopia either. So it's, you know, I don't even have an option here, but I don't want you to have to answer all these. But the one last thing, again, out of context here, was the, and it comes up, is, I can't even pronounce, I think, 3 of the words you have in here, which is my only real criticism of you, is you make us have to go look up words, like, you know, maybe you can fill it in for me. So feminism, smash the patriarchy, feminism, wants us to be ruled by Herodins? Termagants? Termagants. Harpies? And crones.
Yeah.
Once again, it's over my head. So maybe that's what's so offensive about this. I'm not sure what those 4 mean, but...
A Herodin is like a battle axe of a woman. Same thing with termagant. Harpies is like a mythological female monster out of Homer. And crones is a wizened old witch-like woman.
So before I even get to the bad part, apparently that's all in bold caps, you're already putting down women.
Well, I'm putting down harpies and crones.
Okay, all right. All right, fair enough. That sets the tone. And the pestering is then made complete by small-breasted biddies who want to make sure nobody is using too much hot water in the shower and that we are all getting plenty of fiber. Mm-hmm. That one seems a little like you're...
Is that a little punchy?
I mean, it seems like you're putting down women with small breasts.
No.
Yeah, but it's right there. Complete by small-breasted biddies.
No, it's bad to be a small-breasted biddy.
Okay. You would have made a good Pharisee, Doug. That's so. But let's say it was like, if it was written the other way by, men with small penises who want to do something. Is it the same rhetorical jab you're trying to get, or it comes across that way?
So I've written before. I'll use an example I've actually used.
This was in 2014. Maybe you're a better writer now. I don't know.
No, that's superb writing.
Okay,
that's superb writing.
Okay, all right.
So let's say I called a man a mousy little pencil neck.
Okay, right.
Okay. Right. Now, someone could say, "Now, Doug, he was
born that he's a little guy.
Born that God don't make no junk." And,
right.
Right. And so, what are you doing, picking on a physical trait that he doesn't have any control over? Right. Okay.
Right.
How do you justify that?
Yeah.
So. And this really is really something other than a Pharisee.
But why does that not seem offensive? But
because you're picking on a guy. Because women are the sacred priestesses in our culture, and this is why I do it.
But isn't the irony that sacred priestesses just end up being temple whores and prostitutes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an irony there. So. Everybody who knows me and knows the way I treat the women in my family, right? My wife and my daughters and my granddaughters. And so it knows that I honor them, look up to them, respect them, right? So and I think that that's absolutely essential. That's what a patriarch of the right sort ought to do.
Right.
Okay. Now, as a class in our culture, in our era, in our time, women are the anointed priestesses, but only if they are women who endorse the narrative of women must be priestesses.
Got it.
Okay. If they're a godly Christian woman, we don't listen to them. But if they are, if they're playing the game, then they are to be revered. Okay. Now, when I show up at their temple of woman, they've got this big temple of woman built
With pussy hats.
Right? And I throw a dead cat at the high altar. Okay, which is what this is.
Right.
Someone says, why do you throw dead cats at every woman you meet?
Right.
I say, I don't. I only did it here in this temple.
Right.
To this false temple to a false goddess.
Right.
I only did it here, and I did it here for a reason. Okay. Now, I respect and honor women, and I respect and honor the women in our church. I respect and honor women in history. I respect and in many ways look up to them. But what I don't look up to, so let's say that there's a petite little woman who is a gifted evangelist, and she works with the downtrodden, and she's got a soup kitchen ministry. She's just a saint. Right?
Yeah.
She's just and someone says, Doug, I'd love you to meet so and so, but you probably wouldn't like her. She's small breasted.
Right.
That person would have no idea what I'm doing here. All right. So when you're a cartoonist, when you're a caricaturist, there's a mystery here, but I've wondered for years how a caricaturist could draw a picture of Margaret Thatcher with a 3-foot nose and have you still be able to recognize her. Right. Political caricatures. Yeah. A caricature accentuates and amplifies and paints in gaudy colors certain things in order to make the way it really is understandable. Right. So Jesus didn't really ever meet someone who strained out gnats and swallowed camels. Right. Nobody does that. Right. Right. So what Jesus did was he drew a ludicrous picture of a camel in your coffee, and you're getting the gnat out of there, and you're swallowing the camel. Right. Well, that's a bizarre, ludicrous, outlandish picture. So that's Jesus the caricaturist. Right. Okay. Taking a speck out of your brother's eye when you got a railroad tie in your own eye. Right. That's Jesus the caricaturist. Okay. So if I were to draw a woman who is a no nukes peace protester, okay, why would I draw big round spectacles like this? Right. Yeah. And a T-shirt. Right. Because I'm a good caricaturist. Right. That's the caricature. Right. So, and even the elements that maybe a person like that could have would mess up the caricature, because if she was attractive in a way that we think is attractive, it messes up the whole picture. It messes up the whole picture. Exactly. And so what people are exhibiting when they object to this sort of quote, they're responding in the way they are because what I did was effective. But for them, I wasn't trying to get them to comprehend what I was doing. I was trying to get them to react to what I was doing, which they have done. Okay? And people who think that I'm making fun of men with shirt collar sizes of 12 and under. Right. No, pencil neck refers to a particular set of characteristics. But you're saying we're so far from understanding that, though, just because however we got here, you can't say anything negative about women. Right. Now, the other thing is I mentioned earlier in one of the other segments is the Overton window. And that is
unless she's a conservative Republican woman in Congress or something.
Yeah. So the Overton window is the range of acceptable discourse, and it's been moving steadily left. So things that used to be inside the window 10 years later are now hate crimes.
Right.
Okay. Now, many conservative Christians, I would call them go along, get along Christians,
yeah,
are distressed at the Overton window moving, and they're moving right along with it. And they hope that they can slow the momentum down and maybe push or lean this way and make it go back a little bit. But the Overton window can never be moved from inside the window. Someone's got to plant a flag outside the window and say, you're going to say this is the acceptable realm of discourse. Well, I just said this over here. And no, I'm not going to apologize.
Right.
Okay. But you have to apologize. Well, watch me not.
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm going to use this as an illustration, and be careful. Viewing public, be careful, because there's certain things I'm not saying about this.
Start the edit here. Go ahead.
Yeah. This was Donald Trump's superpower. Okay. Yep. His refusal to apologize.
Right.
Now, there were times, and this is my qualification, there were times when he ought to have apologized. There were times when he put his foot in it and he just mouthing off, and there were times where I think he owed an apology and he didn't give one. But the thing that made him such a wrecking ball in official Washington was his refusal to apologize. He you only can talk here. Right. And so he would talk out here, and then when people demand apology, he would laugh at them and make fun of them. And so that kind of thing moves the Overton window back.
Right.
Now, sometimes legitimately, and this is the qualification, sometimes Trump should have. Basically, you should apologize if God thinks you owe an apology.
Right.
But you shouldn't apologize just because the people who were offended on behalf of small-breasted biddies.
Which, when you don't apologize in that category, then it's very powerful. There's a cosmic tension to it.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Because demands for apology are our generation's steering wheel. Okay, that's how people get steered. That's how they get maneuvered. They say something that someone takes offense at. They set up a hue and cry, and they demand your apology. Apologies in the Christian world, an apology is calculated for one purpose, and that is the restoration of a relationship. You did something wrong to someone. You need to put things right. You need to seek forgiveness, and you do, and the relationship is restored. Okay, what our culture has done is we've weaponized apologies.
Right.
So when someone does something or says something that you think you can make hay out of, you pounce on it and you begin demanding apologies right away. And basically, when that happens, you should be willing to apologize if the Archangel Gabriel comes down and tells you to. But short of that, if you're having weaponized apologies thrown at you, we demand an apology right now, I would just give him something new to be upset with.
This is Darren Doan, and thank you for listening to All My Friends Are Heretics.